I am Leona, and today I'm speaking with Cerina from Namibia. Cerina, you were born in Namibia in 1984. You grew up with your parents and two younger sisters. But at 13, your father passed away. The same year, you left for boarding school. At 16, an eating disorder shaped your teenage years. After school, you studied food science at Stellenbosch University and spent some time in the UK before launching your corporate career in Namibia. After 7 years in the industry, you pursued an MBA, which became a turning point. Within 2 years, you quit your job, moved to Cape Town, and joined a US VC firm in South Africa. During this time, you co-founded Future Females, a movement supporting female entrepreneurs. That project brought you to Germany, but when COVID hit, you returned to Namibia. Around this time, a life-changing psilocybin experience reshaped your perspective. As Future Females scaled, burnout followed. Recovery was slow, but you met a Namibian man and got married last year. Now you live on the Namibian coast, immersed in self-discovery, spirituality, and preparing for life beyond 40. Let's dive into your journey. Welcome, Cerina.
Hey, Leona. Thank you for inviting me to this chat.
The first question I always have, how does it feel to hear your story like that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's so funny that you asked me that because the other day someone asked me out of the blue, they are writing and if they can write my story. And I was like, no, you can't write my story. Number one, I don't think I'm so adventurous, if I compare myself to others. But also number two, I'm still living my story. Like there's still loads to happen. I can't write a biography already, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it definitely goes to that question that you asked me at a stage, which was, which were the big turning points in my life? And those definitely were the big shifts and the things that impacted the most. So it was nice to reflect on that a little bit and just give credit to those moments, sometimes good and sometimes hard, but always a lesson. Yeah.
I understand. Thanks for sharing. And also thanks for all your openness. You shared so many pivotal moments already. I really always like to dive into childhood first, as much as you like to share. How was it growing up in a safe home, as you said, with two sisters in Namibia? How is childhood looking like?
Yeah. And I said this to you before, it's so important for me. Like I've got so much gratitude for it because I know that not everyone had that. And I can honestly say, up until when my dad died, I was really in a very safe home. I always describe kind of like my childhood as my mom and my dad truly lived for us. Now, I imagine that they also lived for each other and for this marriage, because it was just the five of us that mattered. If I think about family holidays, like later on, I realized that friends go on holidays. So even as a grown up, you've got friends, right? And then you would go on holidays and kind of like meet up with your friends. And then, families will go to the beach or like dinners together or whatever. And it wasn't like that for us. It was really just the five of us. My parents just focused on us so much. And one thing I'll never forget was when we were 3 kids. And obviously, I grew up in this very small town. There's not like clothing shops and whatever. So when you go away for your annual holiday, summer holiday, then also you kind of like have to get clothes for the year or whatever. And then with 3, my mom would kind of go like, okay, today I'm taking Liesel for shopping or Cerina, and then my dad would take the other 2 to the beach or whatever, right? And my mom took the one for clothes shopping the one day. My dad took us to the beach, and I was already a little older then. I was lying under my blanket or under my towel, and I just had this really bad feeling. And I was like, why are they not coming? Like, it's taking really long. And I got so sad and so scared. And I think that just showed me in how much safety I grew up, so much safety. Also within that, the memories and the traditions that my parents also just had with us. Like Friday night would be a braai with my dad, just us, but like barbecue. And I was the oldest, right? So I would be a little bit closer to him at that age. Or I remember like Wednesday evenings, there would be classical music on the radio. And at that stage, we still had cassettes, right? And so my mom would play these classical music, and how she taught us classical music. So I'm just very privileged and very, very grateful for this super safe environment that I grew up in. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I do think that I want to add this though, because also my gran on my mom's side, she was also very close to us, right? And I do think, Leona, that also shaped a lot of my expectations in a mature relationship, that safety that I felt. Now I know that because my dad fell away, there was lots of things that creeped in also now as crux, like as bad things in a mature relationship. But when I think about this safety from my gran and my mom and my dad, and that's what's also what I kind of like expected from the outside world, which isn't not many people grew up like I did, right? So to expect that safety, because that's just what I'm used to, that was also like, I guess, something to get used to, because then I was like, oh, not everyone has that, so they can't always give that. Because they just don't understand it. They just never felt it, so they can't give it, right? An interesting view.
How beautiful. What is it? Because, of course, for a lot of people who have never been to Africa, have never been to Namibia, please guide us a bit. How does childhood in Namibia look like?
Yeah.
You're playing the whole time in the desert, walking around, and there's no one. How does it look? What's a childhood like in Namibia?
Yeah. Okay, so where I grew up. So now, firstly, Namibia, not a small country. My dad was a geography teacher, and he had this map of Namibia with the whole Western Europe fitted into Namibia. So that's kind of like how big it is, right? So for me to drive down to my mom is the same as for you to drive down to Portugal right now, And so a biggish country, but not a high population. We have about 1.2 million, maybe a little bit more, 1.3 million people in this entire Western Europe, right? Imagine that. And then mostly a semi-desert country, but as you move throughout the regions, it's different. So there would be areas with complete desert where it's just dunes on our west coast, the oldest desert in the world.
Yeah.
But then as you also move up there, you've got higher rainfalls, you move more up, you almost get like, I don't want to say tropical, but you get your palm trees. You go into the delta where Botswana is, so people who kind of like know that. Where I grew up was in the south and in a small little town with 2,000 people. And a very big farm community. And you think that no one else is kind of like used to a small village like that. But there's villages like this all over the world, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so for me, having a dad who's a teacher, we stayed in the school residence. So he was one of those teachers that kind of like looked after the hostel kids, right? But for us as the teachers' kids, it was super nice. I think for my mom too, because she always said she never had to install discipline because we grew up with discipline. It was just normal to make your bed, right? Because everyone else does. It makes their bed. Clean your shoes after school. Do your homework from 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5 is school is like sports, and then dinner is 5:30, and then everyone plays again, and then as you grow up. So all of these routines were so normal for us. I think that also, must admit, shaped a bit of me because there was routine and there was discipline, right? So if I think about my personality, that kind of like shaped it. But also they were always friends, right? So they were constantly friends with me. And it is underdeveloped little town, village. So you have, your kids with imagination, with like field, and you build your own brick homes or like houses or like from stones, right? And just very, very playful, very safe. Again, this farmers community, these friends around us, and even then kids that love my parents as teachers, who would also just like fill our house. So lots of love filling my life. I think also maybe that influenced why there were not a lot of comparisons, if I could say that, because it was such a simple life. So there weren't lots of comparisons, not very challenging. But yeah, that's it. And family and friends who's got farms. So you go there and you ride on horses and like get to know the farm or whatever, right? I mean, I didn't walk around with elephants and wild lions in our house because it was still a village, right? But I think also what's important to know, or what was important in our life, is we had a beautiful relationship with, and I'm going to call them Black people, right? So with other tribes in our country. Now, Namibia and South Africa is different anyway, right? We don't have those aggression between tribes. That's the one difference, because we often say, we're very similar to South Africans, and we're very close because we kind of like go to boarding schools, or we marry each other, and so we move, or we go into holidays to the other countries. And I mean, we do come from a lot of South Africans too, right? Just our history. But I think that's also a very important thing. Like my mom had, or like my gran, and even though they were workers on her farm, my mom would also say, I went into their little houses and had pumpkin from their pots, right? And so I grew up in a family that were very liberal. My dad made sure to invite people into our home, and that also definitely had a very big influence on who me and my two younger sisters are, because we just see everyone as the same. Yeah.
You're describing it now in a very beautiful way, and you're smiling a lot. I see how you're enjoying that memory. What would, if you would now put it into words, what would be the values you're taking away from that childhood time and experience nowadays on your life?
Sure. I think so. Equality is probably something that would always kind of like be there. So people are equal, and you treat them equal. Safety is a big thing. So safety and love. But I think the other thing that my parents and my grandma showed a lot in their living, which I believe in a lot, is compassion. I think that's probably one of the biggest things for my mom, is always to have compassion for everyone else. And honestly, it's funny because I think I journaled yesterday and I was like, which is now the most important for me? Authenticity, love, or compassion? Haven't discovered which one yet, but compassion, definitely a big one that came from my childhood.
I can definitely relate to that. Thanks. Well, and then as I understand correctly, you were the oldest daughter. So that's always coming with responsibility. And then your father died. And being an oldest daughter and also losing the parents, I have a bit of an understanding for that situation. But please, whatever you like to share, how was that for you? What do you remember from that time? What was it what you struggled with the most? Was it the grief per se, or was it the whole family context?
I know there's so many traumatic things that happen in life, right? For me now, I experienced losing a parent, and I lost it at a certain age, right? So I can kind of like only speak to that, and I don't want to dismiss any other trauma for anything else, right?
Of course.
But I think the thing that, how I can explain it the best, is when a parent falls away. It's like this family. It's like the family is this bungalow. Actually, I guess probably the kids is this bungalow on these two stilts. And when the one parent falls away, like this bungalow will never, even if the parent tries to move to the middle, like it will never really just balance again. And that's how the family dynamics change when a parent falls away. And your wildest dreams, like so many other things, like you can't imagine how it will impact and how it will play out in life, right? I think that's the thing that got me the most, is like how we could never get right again, or get whole again, or get like to stability again. And that was my experience in our household, right? And my mom tried so many things, but I mean, I was in boarding school in South Africa. She actually moved to South Africa then to get the family together. And then there was like a kind of like a nature freak accident, and so we lost our homes. She had to move back to Namibia. But anyway, so the dynamic was just really, really difficult. And yeah, as you say, then the eldest, you do kind of like step into like a role which you don't even think that you are stepping into. Your mom definitely is not expecting you to be the dad or to be anything, but it just happens, right? And then there's the challenges around when someone new comes in. There's the challenges around when everything kind of like falls apart. Where do you have control? Which is, I guess, around 16, why I definitely got an outlet into the eating disorder. Yeah, it was tough. It was hard. I think, Leona, I recently had a guided journey, and we did an inner child healing journey. And for the first time, so now I'm 14, I was 13, so it's 27 years, right? It's a lot. It's a lifetime. And I always said, I'm not angry at my dad. I'm angry at God, because God allowed this, not my dad. My dad had no say about this. And so in this inner child journey that I did a couple of weeks ago, I realized for the first time, I am so angry at my dad. I'm so angry, because he agreed to it and he allowed it. And he allowed then that all of these things happened, which then happened in our family since the last 27 years, right? It was super interesting, because I think what's important here for me is that any person who I speak to now, I can say, just because it's so much time, it doesn't mean that you've processed it. And I have so much understanding now for you if you haven't processed it, if you think you've processed it, but it's still like something. I'd say, yeah, that's my most recent takeaway on this experience.
Thanks. Especially, I can imagine the same time you also moved to boarding school. So it's not only losing your dad, it's probably also, changing the whole family system and dynamic and being apart from the closest people you love so much, right? So I think that's a big shift.
Yeah, it's just, and it's funny. So normally boarding schools worked like this in those days. Every third weekend was a out weekend. Like everyone was forced to go home actually. And so the third weekend came, I went home, saw my family, and my dad, like normally it's a mom who kind of like hugs you last, right? When you go into the car or into the bus or the bike. But this time it was my dad. And so my dad hugged me so long and it was so nice. And so I got into the car, we left. And so the next third weekend, I got into provincial tennis qualification tournaments or something like that, which was kind of like good. And so we decided that I'm going to stay and do this tournament because it might be good for my school career. And my dad died the Tuesday after that. So then you are like, oh my gosh, if I just went home, I could have seen him. Yeah, so there's kind of like the guilt and there's kind of like all of these things that you move through. And as you say, yes, then I was away from the family, which was then kind of like an interesting one for me. I always think about this is I had these friends. I had kind of like good friends because lots of Namibians were sent to boarding school in South Africa, right? So I had this group of friends and I remember this one night after lights out, I was with them and I think I started crying. And then a couple of weeks later, one of these friends said to me, just don't come over again and cry.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm shocked to hear that.
I mean, but I mean, children don't know. And if you're in a safe environment, you just can't imagine what it really feels like when someone falls away.
Oh my God, hearing this from people who are close to you. I'm sorry, but I can definitely relate on so many levels to these experiences. Wow. And then teenage years being in a boarding school, and then probably also that kind of eating topic that was a bit present for a while. Maybe just one question: how did you solve that?
Yeah, Leona, I would like to know from other people if they've solved it, but I don't think you ever solve it. You get to a point where you accept your body, you accept life, you get to know food, but there's triggers, right? And I recently did a 14-day fast, which was you're pushing me to the limits because I can't do a fast because the triggers are way too bad. You know, they go into like just body dysmorphia within like 8 hours. I go like I see a different person in the mirror and all these things. But there's a lot of things right now, how I'm living my life, which is just taking me away from it. Actually, I'm going to be very honest. As we get frustrated with some people, we notice that those are triggers for you to learn, right? So I get triggered by that. And so actually I'm supposed to learn something from it. And so the moment that I judge, I go like, oh, what is my lesson here? And so an eating disorder is on the one side, you know, an addiction. So you're running away from some things, you are getting your dopamine from some things, you know. And so the moment that I accuse someone else from an addiction, whatever that is, or the moment that I say to someone, you're not facing your demons, or the moment then I go like, where are you doing that for you? And so when I now go into want to relapse, I go like, okay, so you're not facing your demon. What about this addiction? And you want the loved one to move beyond addiction. So where can you now show up for yourself to move beyond addiction, to allow these people in your life to move beyond their addiction too? Because if you are their mirror and they're your mirror, you know. So that's a very big thing for me right now, even bigger than the thing about the relationship with food. But so this mirror relationship is it's a big one for me right now. And the second thing I must admit, and I think we will touch on this a little bit around, you know, my most recent interest in my body and 40 and all these changes. But I think that the second biggest thing around the eating disorder right now is that my body is a temple of spirit. And, you know, as a Christian, you kind of like grow up like that. You know, you're the church that God lives in. But because we grow up with it, we're just so used to those words that we don't know the true impact of it. But as my religious and spiritual journey just evolved, the more I am aware of, I am hosting my own soul. Okay, so Cerina, this is the body. You are hosting your own soul. And so what do you want her to experience? How do you want her to feel? And then bigger spirit, if I'm connected to bigger spirit, to God, and he's experiencing life through me, how do I want him to feel? And this is my honor to him, how I treat my body. So in this human experience, then how am I honoring that? And then also, if the soul is having this human experience on earth, then have that ice cream and enjoy this thing. And so experience, don't say no to things now. If you think about the food, the relationship with food. So kind of like, reshaping that relationship then too in a different way than it is to calories in, calories out. And like, this feels full, or this doesn't feel full.
Very great reframing, I would say. So thank you for the openness to share this, actually. Really, thank you. Okay, let's jump forward then. After high school, after boarding school, you started studying. How did you make the decision of what to study?
I had someone tell me what to do. So I went to one of those tests, and the lady said to me, so I obviously at that stage, big relationship with food. So the lady said, you have a big tendency to dietitian, but your personality is not going to have enough patience for your patient. So when they go and eat a cake when they're not supposed to, you're going to go like, look, you don't want to do this, so don't waste my time. I think also I fell in love with science a little bit around 17, when I was like all about experiments and like hypothesis and let's prove this. She said, you're going to look into food science. You don't have the personality that I can give you 3 options, because you'll be like so all over the place. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to investigate it. If you don't want to do it, then you come back and I give you the other options. So that's what that's what I went to study. So it's a BC degree. To be honest with you, Leona, I'm not a good student. I'm a hard worker. I always said that, and I always kind of like dismissed myself, because I said, I'm not smart. I just only work hard to achieve things. And I remember my first coach said to me, it's actually okay if you work hard, Cerina. It maybe shows more of yourself than just being smart and not having to work at anything. But so I don't want to say I'm not smart, because there's so much power in words. But so I worked hard, but I struggled, to be very honest. I'm also, don't like to sit down and work. And then it really probably wasn't a big interest of mine. Probably the truth is I fell in love with this guy when I was 16, but we were so far apart. But then we started dating 2 years. So we were like holiday lovers, teenage loves, whatever. But then we officially started dating then in my final year. And then so when I studied at Stellenbosch, he was in Stellenbosch too, right? So I was also very in love. Anyways, I think that what's important is like I studied food science, graduated, but not in the 4 years that I should have graduated. I had like an extra year, but also Stellenbosch was a beautiful experience for me because I was with this guy. Also, there was obviously heartache in between because, student lovers and all of these things, but I had beautiful friends, beautiful moments. And I think that's the other thing about my life. Everywhere that I go, God sends beautiful people, which just makes me feel loved, makes me feel safe. I met some of my best friends in Stellenbosch also, and I'll always remember that. Yeah,
it's interesting when I hear you talking. On one hand, you could say, okay, it's a bit of an irony with an eating disorder. You study food science, and on the other hand, it's like a bit of a threat and theme in your life, because now again you're focusing on your body as a temple. So what kind of nutritions do you actually put into your body, right?
Yeah.
So were you thinking about that in that way?
Yeah. So in the beginning of the year, when I decided now that I'm going to actually put what I've been learning for the last year into a course, I remember sending a voice note to my mom and saying, hey, Mom, I think I want to do this. And I realized, oh my gosh, now, 22 years later, actually, life is bringing me back into the nutrition side. Because food science isn't dietitian, right? So it's the science behind it's inventing, it's research and development, those kind of things. And so you kind of like move away from nutrition, go a lot into like production and all of these things. But now at 40, life is going like, look, this was and is such a deep interest of you. And we're just bringing it back because, this is a lot of, this is a theme, and there are deep alignment with this. And also gratitude towards deepening that nourishment, like you say, deepening that honor, because even now, again, to say, okay, I know these things and now I'm going to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add this. Almost 3 years ago, just after my burnout thing, but in that June, I said to myself, you know what? You are allowed to eat anything. Eat as much as you want and see if you get fat. Like, eat cake every single day. Eat as much as you want to, and let's just go for it. And I must admit also, Leona, I haven't really stopped with that thought, because I thought to myself, I have to get out of threat mode almost, and get into like abundance just around food. There is enough food, number one. It's not like you're going to starve to death, because I realized that's also a theme, like deep down, which is probably very ancestral. There's this fear that I'm going to die without food, of hunger. And so at first I was like, okay, so that's the one thing. You just eat whatever without this dismissal. And the second one was, let's see if you can get fat, actually, Cerina. But now also when I turned 40, realizing that, hey, Cerina, actually now it's not, you've proven that to yourself. You're not getting fat, right? But what you're doing to your body now with eating cake whenever you want to is actually not an honor to the body anymore. So now then, this shift is a little different. Yeah. So I definitely noticed that. And thank you for noticing that too, I guess.
Thanks for sharing. I can understand that. But interestingly, you didn't start working in the food sector. So somehow after university, you got into
No, I did.
it. Okay.
I did. So, but why I was lucky was the company, the corporate that I joined, did this graduate program. And they put this through this development program for a year. Now, the corporate that I worked for, also a group of companies, they had 3 food production plants, one in dairy, one in fish, and one in meats. And so they placed me at the dairy factory. And so I did start it in the food industry. What was really nice for me about that, 2 things. Number one, so I started in the lab. Obviously now you're kind of like this graduate person, but the factory manager came to me and he said, look, we will not respect you if you don't start from the bottom. So you will go down outside to the tankers and learn how we offload the milk, right? You'll start there. So obviously I had like work in the lab and like, things that I had to do. But on the side, then I also had to learn these things so that I can understand production. So the supervisors can kind of like get to know me. I get to know them, So I really appreciated that because I honestly worked on the floor. I completely understood it. The second thing why I'm very grateful for this program is because because of the graduate program, kind of like had exposure to leadership, which if you're a normal person starting a job, you won't have. And to this day, Leona, there's senior management in that company, in that group of company, which I still can pick up a phone and just call them and say, I need something, or I'm looking for something, or I want to, can I pick your brain on something? The owner of that company, and I mean, I was away for a very, very long time, but I came back to Namibia and I said, I'm back in Namibia, I'd just like to have a coffee. And we just had a coffee. And when we see each other now in town, we hug. We just have lots of respect for each other. Yeah, so very grateful for that experience in that position. Also want to say, because I did the work inside the factory, and not only there, but I did it in the other food factories that I moved to then too. It's very different to run a tech company versus a product company, right? And then it's very different to run a company and work with, they call them blue collar workers versus, just a telesales company, right? Because the blue collar workers, really, they get the minimum wages, number one. They work in environments like now for me in the food industry where it's freezing because it needs to be cold for the food not to spoil, right? In gumboots, in wet areas. And so just the management around how to motivate such teams, how to understand what they struggle with, but then also understanding how management can't just say yes to everything, but not dismissing this. How communication happens in a group of companies with thousands, tens and thousands of people, and how you go down to still feel connected to like the lowest level of worker. Yeah, I'm very, very grateful for that experience. And I must also admit that I'm not always able to work in those environments or motivate people even in that. And so why this is actually for me, it's almost like a growth to be able to admit this, because I'm not the hero, right? I'm like, actually, I can't do this. I would love to maybe take a management position in such a role or in such a company. I can't, because I just relate too much with the worker who's struggling. And that's not what you need in like a management. You need someone to come be positive, be visionary, and all of these things. And I go like, I can't actually. And even where I am in my life right now, like my mom would probably love that I take up a corporate job again and have some stability in my career and finance and all of these things. But the honest truth is I will not be good at it. I would not add value to the company or the employee, because I would not motivate them. I would sit in ashes with them probably. But anyway, that's my good experience around getting that first job, but also kind of like my experience throughout the physical corporate space and food space in my life.
You said now, okay, I'm not gonna be a good manager. I will not enjoy working in these areas. But still, I'm wondering, so what is it what you learned about yourself during these corporate years? What is it exactly what you realized about yourself that makes you now say, I'm not good in this position?
Yeah. So kind of like what I said about me, I often have too much empathy with the struggles of the, I'm going to call it the blue collar, right? Where which is all valid concerns or complaints or asks always, right? And so oftentimes I get paralyzed by that. And that's quite a big thing, because even in Future Females, you know, at stages with Lauren and I, big decisions, I sometimes get paralyzed and I can't make a decision. So that's the one thing, right? I lean too much towards like empathy, compassion. And again, you can identify that, and in future roles you go like, okay, I know that I slip, so now this is my trigger and I have to pause. And I guess I do that in other ways. But the other thing is that in a corporate role, Leona, you have to be playing the political role a little bit, right? How do you communicate? And specifically, how do you communicate? And I had a conversation Friday with one of my colleagues. I just walked out of this meeting and I said, the thing with me actually is that I just believe that it's manipulation. When you have to consider how you speak in what you say, it's manipulation. Because then the way that I communicate what I feel and want to say to you, I must think, oh no, how am I going to say it so that you don't feel so bad and don't get attacking and feel defensive and no. Or how am I going to say it so that you feel good about yourself and give me what I want or something like that. So I'm just like, actually considering how you say something is pure manipulation. If we all vibrate at true authenticity, then what I say is what I feel. If what I say is the truth and it's factual, say now in a factory, like you forgot to switch on the electricity, it's factual and you get offended about it, about something that's true, then it's your choice how you authentically react about that, right? You can either go like be reactive and deactive and defensive and all of these things, or you can just go like, actually, that's the truth. You said it down nicely or not, that's the truth. So that's the other thing about me and corporates and those roles. It's like, I don't do, and I did it very well in the beginning, to be honest, Leona. And I guess that's why in the beginning, my career jumps were so good, right? And went into management and went into this and because I could play it. And I always said, you know, I'm a very strategic thinker. I was probably actually very proud of myself for being a strategic thinker and being able to play this role. But I think at a stage it started catching up on me, I think, in ways, because in leadership or in management meetings, I would say, look, just be honest. The answer is yes or no. And I would say this to directors, which at 28 years old, work in corporate and at hierarchies, you don't really say. And so it kind of like got caught up with me. And then I guess I realized, look, I don't want to play this role or this game. And so this is not the type of stuff that I want to be in. Funny enough, also, I think that communication and how I communicate has also been a theme throughout my life. I've learned that I'm not such a good communicator, even though I thought I was. But then also the other thing is, even in my romantic relationships, I would sometimes notice that, hey, this is now becoming manipulation, because I would say, my gosh, it feels like I'm in a boardroom and I have to consider what I say to you, you know? It's funny how it's funny how things come up in different situations.
Patterns are always showing up. Yes,
Yeah.
of course. But thanks for sharing. And it sounded like, yeah, you couldn't be yourself. So that was a reason for you to do an MBA, to step away and go for the next career shift, let's say?
So the thing that really got me into my MBA was I couldn't see career growth. Yeah, so I started thinking about what's my next position, my next opportunity, and I asked around, did research around it, and I mean, to be honest, also I wanted to move out of the factory. The factory was also a role, like physically, operationally, which I didn't enjoy. So not only was it not emotionally or psychologically good for me, it was also physically not nice. I couldn't like paint my nails, I couldn't wear jewelry, couldn't be the girl that I am. So decided to do my MBA because I didn't know what else. I thought like, okay, at least I'm going to learn a lot of things, lots of subjects, and we'll take it from there. And then I did it remotely. So while I worked, then you go down to school every 4 months for a couple of weeks and assignments and all of these things in between. I did it over 2 years. Halfway through, I realized I've been working 8 years for this one company in Namibia, and then the different group of companies. So I did move, but still the big values, the big leadership, the big things were one company. And I decided, one, I want to see how a different company is run. Like right now, I've got good exposure, but this is it. And then the other one was I thought, if I want to move cities and get exposure to other ways, other people, then actually doing it while being in a school program is a good one, because I do have a little bit of a cushion with people who are there. And so I did that. And then I fell in love with the subject that I didn't think I would. Entrepreneurship. Like it was actually the subject that I loathed to do. And then I just enjoyed it so much. My cousin then said to me when we had to do our thesis, why don't you combine your newly found love for entrepreneurship with your operational background? And the Eric Ries book, like the Lean Startup, was just published then. It was a year old or whatever, how we can do. And his book is basically about how to start a startup with like the least amount of waste, like which is the Toyota production principles, right? And so, yes, I did it. I did that case study in a bank who wanted to see if like these principles can be implemented in a corporate where normally innovation takes so long, right? And like decision making and all. So I did the case study and I realized, gosh, I really want to stay in this industry, ecosystem, whatever. And then I think this is probably when stars align or when things are supposed to. So the people that helped me with my research said, you have to go speak to these people. And then, this VC was running this program in the fintech space. So again, it was so good that I did my thesis in a bank in the fintech space, because this was why I got the in, right? Anyway, so a big thing actually was then that I took, moving from Namibia to South Africa, I took a massive salary cut. Because in Namibia, at 30, I had built up, as I said, a good career, solid, bought my first property, paid cash for my MBA, and then I took the salary cut to move to this place, to Cape Town, and take this new job. And then at the end of my MBA, I wanted to do this program or as an associate with the VC firm, but it had to start within a week, and so I had to quit my job within probably like a week, and so I had to buy myself out of my contract. And then also I didn't really get paid much. Like, got paid very, very little from this VC firm, because they actually say that, hey, you're getting the experience and the exposure, which is true, right? Because you get exposure to all of these mentors, all of this network. So that was another very, very important financial decision for me in my life. Anyway, did the program, and there I met Lauren, and we started Future Females. Yeah.
How did that idea come up?
Yeah. So
why Future Females? Why, women, of course, but what was the idea behind? Was there a need, a special idea or intention you had?
Yeah. So what happened was, obviously I had just quit my job and I wanted to be in this ecosystem. And then Lauren had just moved from Australia to South Africa. And so she, being a foreigner, thought about starting a company. Actually, she is like such a full embodied entrepreneur that she probably can't ever work for like a corporate. But anyway, so she was like, okay, then I have to start a company. And so I was in a position where I'm in a new ecosystem. I've never started a company. I'm from the corporate, I'm from food industry, now I'm in the tech space, and I want to stay here, and I need to meet people. And she was like, I want to start a business. I don't know who's the people to know. I need to know the people. So that was one thing. The second thing was, as we were now kind of like, what's in Cape Town, where are like events that we can attend, where we can meet other people, other startups, other founders, mentors, coaches, where can we learn? And then obviously we were on this program together as associates, but actually someone else then said, hey, you two are talking both to me about your interest, about a network and like all of the things that you're looking for. You two should speak to each other. And so then we did, right? But I think a couple of things also add to this. So in this program that we were associates for, there were 75 people in this cohort. 5 of them were women, and the women were only in the operational roles. So no female founders, and then also 5, just operational. And we were like, okay, that's interesting. We asked the MD, why are there no female founders? And he said, number one, very few applied anyway. So the number of applications were very low. And then 2, when they applied, the application was very poor quality. Okay, so we noticed that. Yeah. And so then we also said, look, if these are the things that you and I, Lars and I, are looking for, there must be other women out there that's looking for the same thing. So we are just going to offer what we are looking for. And if there's others, they will gravitate towards us, right? And so then we were like, yeah, future females.
So interesting to hear that. But a lot of the times you hear like entrepreneurial stories where people actually started or doing or offering or founding something because of their own story, right?
Yeah. And so I think a couple of other things are interesting.
Yeah.
We started by hosting events because we wanted to offer the network. Where can you meet peers? Where can you meet coaches, mentors, resources for funding or whatever? So we're going to host these events and you can come. We did a lot of like market research at these events. So we would have people complete surveys for us, like, what are you interested in? Why are you here? What are you looking for? What type of businesses, etc., etc. And so we noticed 2 things. Number one, women have an idea, but they don't know where to start. And so they need the education around how to start a business, right? Well, the second thing was they know exactly what to do, but they need that motivation, that grit, that support to actually start it. So those were the 2 things. So it was education and it was community that we noticed they needed. And even though we were very strong in Cape Town, and at that stage, we launched in Berlin, I think we had one in Namibia, like we knew that we would want to do an online offering. And the big thing for that, which is also an interesting story, is again, also just our 2 personalities, Lauren and mine, which just flows into Future Female so much. So Lauren, coming from Australia, having holidays in Bali, and she is the epitome of like an entrepreneur with a laptop on the beach, right? And she wanted to offer that to everyone. So if you want to build a business and you want to have this lifestyle, that's what she wants to offer. I come from a single mother, and in a country like Namibia, where so few people, or very little people, also they live on farms like hundreds of kilometers from a town. And so many times the woman is just completely dependent on her husband's farm, right? And I wanted it to be an online offering because then these women, wherever they are, could just go through these courses. And so I think, so our whys were different, but it added to the big why. And so that's what was also very nice about Future Females. What was also, for me, if I think about our story, very, very nice, was Lauren and I were strangers, right? When we met and when we started this business. So we set it up quite correctly. But because we were strangers, we had some of the legal stuff really considered and all of these things. Also around the values of the company. Because we truly had to agree what the values were, and that the values were going to be the guide to our decisions. Because here's 2 very different people that have no background of each other. And so what we decide on our values is going to, when we fight, the values will take us back to, okay, this is a decision. And so our values really, really guided us. And in the 90s, 2000s, values became a very big thing for corporates, right? Like, what is your corporate values? Are you living it? Are you, communicating it? But honestly, it was probably the most important thing that we did for us and for our business was those 5 values. And what I appreciated of it was also later on when we had employees that worked with us and guided us and whatever. And when our company grew, and we didn't know what to do, then they would go like, what does the values say? They would even remind us then sometimes to go like, hey guys, go back to our values and let that guide you.
Thanks for sharing. Being an entrepreneur myself, or being in that ecosystem for a very long time. I mean, we met through you coming to Berlin for Future Females and me being responsible for Future Females in Berlin 2018. I always say being an entrepreneur is kind of having a baby. What is it what you learned about yourself during this journey of building this global movement and also having this business partner that's kind of a relationship as well? So what did you learn about yourself in these moments?
I think that's a very hard question for me to actually answer. It's true what you say about this relationship, because it wasn't always just easy. I mean, you can just imagine when I left South Africa for Germany, it was hard on Lauren. She was like, do you not believe in our business? Why do you want to move to Europe? Currently, we're scaling in Africa. And I was like, but that's my personal wish. I want to live overseas. Yeah, hard, that relationship. Good gosh, I'm just so grateful and lucky that she's the one that I ended up with, because she does have a lot of love for me. And I mean, I have immense love for her too, but just accepting it now, I'm so grateful for the person that she is for me, because she offered a very safe space for me ever since the first day that I met her. And she probably will be that role for the rest of my life. Very safe, very supportive, and yeah, so that's the relationship. And learning, oh my gosh, Leona, when I started the internship or the associate program with the VC, I had this little red diary or notebook, because I came from the production space into the tech entrepreneur space, and I was like, I don't even know these words that they're saying. So I would sit in there and I would just write down these words, and in the evening I would go Google what they mean, and then tomorrow go back, because I just was so out of my depth completely. And I mean, any entrepreneur has imposter syndrome, right? Anyway, but I had such imposter syndrome even from the start, from this program, because I was like, who the hell? I don't know nothing. So when we started Future Females, I think at first it was easy because it was truly authentic. And also what I brought from the quality management systems was there, and Lauren, lots of experience being management accountant for Accenture, but also starting her own business before. If when you ask me, okay, what did I actually learn about myself? The fact that it led to burnout is, makes me ask different things than it normally would have, right? I go like, what about this was so out of alignment that you ended up in burnout? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things. The other things was a mentor of mine, which at a stage said to me, you're in the COO role, but you're not an operations person. And I'm sorry to tell you that, because for me, my entire history was in operations, even in the quality systems, right? It was always been operations. So when she said it, it kind of like also shook my credibility for myself, because I'm like, but I'm the ops person. Hey, but I knew deep down that I wasn't the ops person, because I'm not so detail orientated. Like, I don't have all of these plans. I can't do the things that operation people should easily do, right? So that's things that I learned. I'm not as good in the operation role as I thought I would. So the learning for me is, that if I start a business now, that I'm very aware of it. I kind of like get people, do as much as I can to a certain stage, and then I know that either I need other tools, or I need another person, or I need to just be very honest with whoever I'm starting a business with, that these are actually not my strengths. A big learning, obviously, was growing a team internationally, and also building a team with women at a certain age in a certain era of our existence, right? So it was the women movement, then the Me Too movement happened, then Black Lives Matter happened. So the awareness, or like the things to do, running and building a team in that. Also, these two personalities that Lauren and I are. And if you're such a small team, you do hire yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So you do hire lots of people that are like you, and suddenly you have these two groups, because you've got a Cerina personality, you've got a Lauren personality, which is very good, because Lauren and I did work complementary a lot, because she's this one and I'm this one. But then being very aware, like, does the team get along as well? Because also Lauren and I were very honest with each other always, and it wasn't always easy, right? But because we had this massive foundation that we laid for ourselves from the start, we could handle that with each other. But it was super interesting. I mean, the girls, I'm going to call them, they were vocal about what they wanted, because they're in this era about becoming more vocal, stand up for yourself, whatever. And yeah, that was a good learning curve. I think a big learning for me also is community growth. And so I find it super interesting if someone is in the community space, old or current or new, and to be able to have conversations with them. Because I think lots of companies want to build community now. I mean, that's social media is so into that right now, just building community. In the old days, marketing would have called it loyalty, right? Brand loyalty. But community building is a difficult thing. It really is a difficult thing. I mean, you were in it with future females, and then with your own company, and you work with corporates who kind of like try to implement community, right? Both internally in their companies, but then also with their customers. That the learnings from that one. I think also how I look at community right now, very different. How I would implement it also in my brand going forward, very different. Something that was also interesting, and I mean, when we became this international brand, and when we was quite intense on this international brand, the Black Lives Matter happened, and a lot of political stuff happened also at a stage, 2019. And so Lauren and I were faced with people would go like, why aren't you saying anything? And we were like, it has nothing to do with us. Like, we are not in those countries where the political stuff is happening, say, for example. And some of them we might have been with a chapter, but still we were not employing people, and we're not political figures. We're not even famous figures, right? But in a way, people saw us and they were like, you need to react. You need to say something about Black Lives Matter, or you need to say something about Zimbabwe, or you need to say something about, and how we then had to decide, what do we say something about and what do we don't, and how to communicate that to our following, to say like, hey, you know what? Actually, we're never going to say anything about religion, politics, whatever. It's not like we don't care. It's just, this is our stance. So that was an interesting one for me too. Lots of learning around scaling a company internationally, definitely. And then also, you know, with that, also recruiting internationally. So those were big learnings. Yeah. For me, probably the biggest, if I have to give three, would be the relationship with Lauren was one of my biggest growth opportunities, or expansion opportunities. Beautiful and difficult, but also, like, I think you believe too, and your listeners, and you know, the difficult things leads to the beautiful. And the other thing is communication, really. And again, going throughout all relationships, to subordinates, to partners, to customer complaints, to Lauren, to different cultures, just communication, and thinking that you're assertive, but you're not. And the third one is then that thing about the burnout, which forced me to ask, where are you out of alignment?
And that's the question I want to ask. What were the signals or signs you were probably missing, like warning signs?
I can be very honest with myself, and I'll probably make the same mistakes again if I'm in this position again now, even 7 years later. I think there's two parts of me. There's this one part of me that really wants stability and routine and would function really well in a stable job. I would have a very hard time because I don't shut up. But it really wants this stability, right? And then this other part that really hates routine. Like, I can't, even in our co-working space, I would get up and I would sit in a different place all the time. So I hate routine. But my mom said to me at a stage, you know, if I'm also honest, you're not so good at a corp. And so sometimes I wonder, building a company and all of these things, that actually it does get corporate at a stage. There's work instructions, there's how things needs to be done, there's, you know, decision matrix, there's this, there's that. Maybe I wasn't made for that. My mom said, you don't like too much stress, you know, your nervous system.
Who does?
She didn't say your nervous system, but, you know, today I look at it and I'm like, actually, my nervous system actually can't. Now I'm very sensitive to it, because now I'm like, oh, what am I watching TV? How am I feeling immediately? I go like, this red flag. But I wonder, you know, did I build something which actually I couldn't handle because it's too much stress, and I couldn't always handle that. And I wasn't even then always a good co-founder, partner to Lauren, because I was like, shit, I can't handle this, is too much. And she had to do a lot of things alone. So that's maybe a question for me. I think the other thing also is, I didn't always think that this is a problem, but because I thought I'm a very good delegator, but there's something about it that, and this is where I think it comes in, my poor communication. So if maybe I communicated better to her, maybe like updates, regular updates about everything, I wouldn't keep so much, I wouldn't have loaded so much, and I wouldn't have come to a point where actually now I feel so guilty because this isn't done. Now the procrastination comes in, now the fear comes in, now the guilt comes in. These are all lower vibrations, right?
The
And
typical spiral. Yeah.
yeah. And you don't know how to fix it, right? Where if the communication is there from the beginning, like I need help, or like I don't know how to actually do this thing. Because she once said to me, she said, those Excel sheets, if she makes a plan or like a budget or whatever, she says, when I send it to you, I don't send it to you to make you feel good. You know, you think, Cerina, that as a co-founder, I send it to you so that you feel included. I don't. I really want your inputs. I really value what you think and what you would add a point of view to this. And that was such an awakening for me, because that is someone that is so secure and so mature, where she's like, hey, I'm not doing this for anyone's ego. I value your input. And so, number one, that made me realize how we can show work, also ask for help in just a very content way and communicate that. Because then she would say in that Excel sheet, maybe she would say, does this make sense? And I wouldn't have maybe have sent it because I would be too shy to say, does this make sense, Lauren? Because I think this should be perfect, like whatever. So,
you kept it to yourself.
yeah. And even though I am a good delegator, because in my teams I would delegate, but I think there's some things in like this higher relationship which came up a lot and definitely taught me a lot. Yeah, what else led to the burnout? So I think that misalignment, I think also at a stage I just completely neglected anything that is important to me. Even though you don't want it, you don't mean it like that, right? But then suddenly exercise goes haywire, food goes haywire, and those are the fundamentals, right? Just get your eating habits right, and so you've got energy and brain power. And then when we scaled, we worked really, really hard. We did work really hard. Yeah. Also, I think the fact that I did work, which isn't in my zone of genius, made me work harder and longer at it. So it took longer to deliver the task. I felt frustrated. I never felt accomplished. And I felt guilty because I just am not working as productively, as efficiently, or as perfectly as the rest of my team. And I kind of forgot about that not feeling accomplished. But that not feeling accomplished was a massive, massive thing. Also, Leona, to be honest, when we had that opportunity with the scaling, and I had to come back to South Africa, because that's what happened. That's why I moved back, right, from Germany. Because the company was scaling, and I realized that either I'm going to have to hire an ops manager to, scale my business, or I'm going to have to move back. And I honestly never thought that I'll move back. When I moved to Germany, I thought that was going to be home. I was 6 months away from permanent residency. I was solid in my life there. And then I had to move back, and I really didn't want to. I really didn't want to move back. That first year back, we were super busy because we were scaling. So I was on flights a lot. Like Lauren and I would be 3 weeks in Cape Town, 2 weeks in Joburg, then 3 weeks in Namibia. So yes, we worked hard, but also the fact that I was emotionally also in a kind of like a loss trauma, because I just lost a life which I wanted, which I planned, which didn't look like it is, even though it was beautiful in another way too, right? There was some loss, which later on I only realized I actually have to work through, and which is draining in another way, which I didn't know that there's a drain. Yeah.
I understand letting go and maybe leaving plans behind or ideas we had of ourselves or of our lives is a very tough struggle, because we have to be open again to a new possibility and a new path, right? I understand that. I think there's no quick fix for that. What did you do? What were the biggest supporters for you in terms of getting out of burnout zone? What helped you?
That is a very complex answer, right? Honestly, Leona, I am through it, but it didn't happen as perfectly, right? There were lots of other very hurtful things going on in the last 3 years, even while I was healing from burnout. I had great support in people, right? I, again, had lots of love. I had Lauren, who gave me lots of time and love and support. People in the Future Females team, lots of love and support and time. time. I met Joe, my husband, just as I went into burnout. Like literally, I met in the week, and 2 weeks after was the day that I had a call with Lauren, and she was like, you have to leave for 2 weeks. You have to go home for 2 weeks. Like I'm saying, go home, but we were on the phone. But she actually said, you just need to not be in the office, in the space, and like whatever. You're sick. You need to be booked off. And so just was a physical space where I fell into. And at a later stage, Joe said to me, start gardening. Now, to be very honest with you, that was not very nice for me at that stage, because I was like, I know nothing about gardening. And now you're giving me this massive responsibility to actually start a vegetable garden. Like I know nothing. And what he knew was that your hands are going to get dirty. So there's going to be exchange in like not only energy, but even in, microbiology and like these things that happen when you work with your hands in the soil. There's going to be some things around, because I remember so many mornings that I got up, walked the dogs, and I would sit and just pull out the weeds. That's actually meditation, because you're just thinking about nothing. You're just thinking about these weeds and you're just taking them out, or just cry, And then at a stage maybe you will even just think about how this garden is going to be designed. Where's what going to be planted? That's a little bit of creativity, right? And then you'll start planting and you'll see your first plants come up. And maybe you'll fail and you go like, oh my gosh, this garden is just teaching me so much patience. And you go like, oh, patience. How does that feel? And so I must say the garden was a big thing for me, even though I hated it for months. And I hated Joe for giving it to me. I can't think about my burnout without the support of the people, which is a big, big thing about the Future Females team.
It is a very important thing.
Because of the time and the space they gave me for months. I would say that I exercised. I did a little bit of exercise here and there, not getting into routine at all. I realized that getting into routine would be more stress on my body. Then what was interesting is going back to the old exercise that I was used to. And I was like, my body can't go into that. That's way too hard for me. And being kinder with the body around, what you put it under. And I think last year, June, was when I said, okay, now I'm okay. It was 2 years. So I say, you think that it's a break of 2 weeks and you're going to come back to work and you're going, it's not that. It's a complete different, you're a different person, number one. Number two, it's almost like COVID. You had to learn new things and ways, just not to cope, but just to get through. And sudden, and in a way that kind of like becomes life thing. You are like, actually, I need slow mornings. I need like 3 hours before, since I wake up till before I work. 3 hours. I don't know how other people can get to work within 45 minutes. I can't. I needed this. I needed that. I can't do this. My nervous system won't allow this anymore. So today I have lots of more grace for myself. Definitely also had coaching. So I have someone that helped me, have done lots of nervous system work, still don't know everything. I still need to, I know so much, but what am I actually implementing? Am I always implementing it? No, all of these things. I think a big one is actually just the alignment, and to be honest with yourself around how much you work too, because the physical expenditure of your energy is a big thing, right? If you don't get any back. And there's this beautiful article about the 7 types of rest, which you should be creative, they should be restorative, all of these things. So it's not always just sleeping. That's interesting. And I don't always do all of those things. Like yesterday I had a beautiful Sunday.
You're just a human being.
Huh?
You're just a human being.
Oh, I guess so. Like yesterday I had a beautiful Sunday, just very peaceful. And at the end of the day, I could actually think about, hey, what do I want to implement in this week, which I don't always do. And I thought to myself, hey, you can maybe start implementing this, which would be beneficial in such a way. And we'll see how that plays out. Will I do all of the things that I thought was really good? I guess if you say it like that, being more human and allowing for that. And then at a stage, and at a stage, all of these things, someone said it gets gravity and then it settles. So the more that you do it, the more it gets gravity and the more that it settles. Yeah. And so I guess that's where I am. Luckily, we evolve, because sometimes you wake up and you go like, now I actually do that permanently. Or you go like, oh my gosh, I don't need to do that anymore because I'm okay.
I always try to explain to my clients, routines we develop or we establish to actually support us during mental health crises or, down phases or something like that. We're not building them the moment we're actually feeling bad or down. We're creating them as a habit when we're actually in a good place. So then they're becoming more and more of an automation or like a little bit of a habit when we're actually not in a good place. Right? So I think that's always a great reminder. And also when I hear you, I think also very important is always to remind ourselves we are human. We don't have to do all the things all the time perfectly, right? So thanks for your authentic perspective and sharing on that. I wanna jump into your magic mushroom psilocybin experience. I do have a lot of experience with that too, so I can definitely relate to pivotal moments that come up with these experiences. But please share whatever you like about that experience. How did it come into your life and what has changed through that experience?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I never used any substances or drugs in my life. I didn't feel the need. I sometimes maybe in high school, I thought maybe I'm not cool enough because no one ever offers me anything. Anyway, so I was never exposed to drugs. And even while living in Berlin, right, I never moved in those spaces and stuff. And so when I went down to South Africa for the December break in our lockdown 2 in Germany, I done a lot of like personal development in the last couple of years. And I just, what was coming up in my mind a lot was I feel this urge for like the next deepening. I don't know how to deepen my relationship with God, deepen my self-exploration. Like I've just hit the ceiling. I don't know what to do now. And like I'm curious now for something else, but I'm also frustrated because I don't know what else. And then this one girl mentioned something about a psilocybin journey. And I was like, oh my gosh, can I do it? But there were like 4 days left that I was in Cape Town. And she was like, you've never done anything like this, right? I said, no. And so she introduced to the facilitator and we had a call. At the end, I think it just worked out. So I was staying in my old Cape Town apartment. So I took the option that this lady comes to my place and we do the Euros journey in my place. So I was so safe, right? Anyway, so I had this conversation. This lady was going to come to my house and because my flatmate was away then for that weekend. So it was just perfect. But I am a Christian, right? And for Christian believers, like any other like strict religious people, you would know that you would kind of like you're scared for stuff like this because you go like, what am I opening myself up to? Because this is now in a spiritual realm that we're moving into, right? And so I had lots of prayers, obviously, with God. And I remember I had to start fasting at a certain time, and then I took my shower and I said to God, look, this doesn't need to happen. It's not like I need this. I didn't even know what this is. But if this is not good, then don't let this happen. Like she doesn't have to show up, like whatever. But this should be your will. And everything worked out. She showed up. And when I started my trip, how it happened, I think most people are kind of like, no, you've got a little bit of the kaleidoscopes and then you go into the trip, right? A little bit of the kaleidoscopes and how I went into the trip. I walked into a club and there's Jesus standing at the bar and I go like, I love you. I am so in love with you. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I cannot tell you how much I love you. And so this is me reacting. And at the other stage, I'm like, this is God. This is Jesus in the beginning of your journey going like, hey, I'm here. I approve. Let's go.
Mm. Mm.
And
Wow.
so then I
get
also
goosebumps.
yeah, so then I also totally just knew this is so good. And it's a rough ride. You do face a lot of things, but it's the most gosh, it was a beautiful, rewarding journey for me. For me specifically, my journey went a lot into like previous loves, and so I could spend time and let them go, which was a beautiful healing for me. And I was honestly super, super sad in it, and coming out of it, like in my journey, moved into the space of euphoria and the love and the things, and then I just knew that I'm changed for life and that this is what I would want to make accessible and introduce actually in my own country, in my own religion, in my own culture, because this is expansive and it could be misunderstood so many times, but also there's so many people and I'm going to say in my country, in my religion, in my culture, who is curious about this and would want to know, but they don't have a safe space for it.
Mhm.
And so I just knew that would be part of my future, right? And so this spiritual involvement too. So with after that, then a lot of, I mean, you're so intrigued by all these things now that can happen in and about this world, right? I did go not very deep, but I mean, I found out quite a lot of things. That's inner work again, further, etc. And you explore some things. What I love right now is that I'm open to some things. Something like I choose not to believe this. Okay, so this is a choice. Even though sometimes I feel very deeply that some things are affiliated or it's really meant to be, and then I trust it. And I say that at the moment for everything, even for people with the relationship with God or not a relationship with God or spirit or like whatever, or with whatever, is that trust yourself and your inner being the most. That connection, if you feel it, then it's there. If it's not, then just trust that. Yeah, so that's on the religious and the spiritual side. Also, I am now in a space. When Joe and I met, one of the big things that we connected on was the use and the benefit of plant medicine, and that we want to offer safe spaces to people. And then he had built this beautiful space already, which he welcomed me in, and he was spiritually probably saying to me, make it your own. And we have hosted a couple of sessions where we offered this space to people that's interested in the plant medicine, into deepening relationship. And actually, we are starting our own mushroom company also. Joe is in the background working very hard on it because he's literally like growing it from spore form, and he's built like this little lab and the grow rooms in different containers. But I'm just so amazed. I'm very excited that this part, which I wanted to do since that psilocybin journey, is actually something that's going to realize.
Wow. Who was Cerina before that experience and who is she after that experience?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel it's the same person. Sometimes I feel like it's a complete different person. But mostly I feel it's the same person with just deeper levels, more level.
Mhm.
I obviously, because of the journey, started looking into other things, which exposed me then to people that have welcomed beautiful things or introduced beautiful things into my life, right? And so for that, I also say thank you, because now there's this different world and these different people and all of these things. There's also an awareness, which I don't think I would have had to consciousness. Yeah, the awareness to consciousness, as I know now, but I know that my brain knows it now, that it's true. And to be honest with you also, Leona, there's some things that I still struggle with to implement in my life, even though I know that that's how the world and the universe and energy works. I said it to my husband the other day. I said, I'm really struggling with this right now. I was crying. I was so frustrated. I know energetically this is what's happening right now, and this is what I'm supposed to do. But physically, me, now I struggle to move now. I think for some of my friends, I might be not weird, I won't say dangerous. My mom would probably sometimes go like, you are dangerous. But then my younger sister, she's got this very attuned, different way. So I would say that she, again, or like me becoming more aware of that part of me, just links more with her. Yeah, but there's still parts of me that's just the same. And now I just maybe even just love me better.
I can relate to these experiences. So one more question I have, okay, you turned 40 last year, another pivotal moment for a lot of women at least, and you're married, you got married. Marriage, relationships in general, doesn't have to be marriage, but of course you have a religious background. What is the biggest learning curve being in a romantic relationship and then also being in a marriage for you?
My husband just entered our house, so he's gonna
What
hear
a timing!
yeah, I know. So he's gonna hear everything on my honesty with you.
If you feel safe about that.
Wow. I described this last year where I said I am being initiated into maturity. And that sounds like fluffy words. Sounds like something that ChatGPT would make up just to sound really cool. But honestly, those are the words that I feel deeply. I'm being initiated into maturity. Okay, so number one, when I got into this relationship at 38, I thought I've got all my shit, figured out. Because I'm 38, I've done lots of internal work, and then I didn't have all of my shit worked out, Then suddenly this person came, and it was like this mirror of just showing me all of the things that I didn't work out, and not always bad in a bad way, right? But I'm going to use this example. I thought I'm very considerate, but in the beginning of our relationship, by not being a hassle about dinner, right? I can eat my yogurt and fruit for dinner because that's okay. I'm okay with that. And he would go like, look, we are now a couple. Let's talk about dinner together and cooking and like, what are we going to cook tonight? And I'm like, oh, don't worry about you. Don't worry about me. I think I'm good. Then I realized, oh, this is actually people pleasing. Oh, this is actually codependency. Codependency is actually a much bigger problem that I have around like even manipulation, that I'm doing things so that people can like me. So I'm not standing up for myself. I'm not saying, hey, I like this one. I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is way more than I just meant this. I just meant I can only have yogurt and muesli. I'm totally fine with it, right? But it's such a big thing. And so for me, this relationship, really invited me to mature. And I still do, Leona. I don't have my shit sorted out. And I guess neither do we, right? We are both older when we got married and into this relationship. But I'm definitely seeing the things that I have areas of growth. One of the things that it sounds like a joke, but it honestly is now something like at a stage, I dressed up in a certain way. He said, that's so odd. And I was like, my 4-year-old self is happy. And since then, that is like really my bar. And now even it would be a joke when I do something and he's like, is your 4-year-old self happy? And I'm like, yes, actually. But I would also see the 4-year-old self throwing a tantrum when she's not getting her way, right? Or I would also see the 16-year-old fighting like a stupid teenager and being immature and like comparing and like being jealous or like being whatever. So I see that. I also see and I acknowledge, the 38-year-old woman who's been alone for most of her life, trying to make a life. And, where do I allow to be led? Where do I go like, fuck, I have no idea what to do next. Can you help me with my bank statement? And then all the other things that's also, like I said to you, I don't know how to garden. I'm not a cook. I eat like because I need energy, not because otherwise I could go out for food to enjoy food because of other people, not because I'm a good cook. And so these little small little things that demands you to grow. It both invites you to grow because you don't have to take that invitation, right? But also demands you if you do decide to take it. And then, like I said to you, the communication. When Joe and I met, and Lauren and I chatted, I can't remember if I said to her, is there any tips or like, what do you want to say to me? Because you're the closest relationship to me. And she said, you're not a good communicator. Remember, when you communicate, that you're not a good communicator. So communicate better in your next relationship or in this relationship now. And it really is a thing for me, where again, I don't share as much. And then I build up like a pressure cooker. And on the Friday, I explode, and sit with the shit against the ceiling. So there's all of these areas of growth. And for me, I honestly believe in that your relationship is the biggest mirror in your life. And so everything that I now see and experience, I go and ask myself, what am I supposed to learn from them? Very recently, I read something about love. And I think where I'm standing about what does it mean to love someone
I just wanted to ask you.
It's unconditional love. And that is to accept the person as he or she is fully, completely. Going back to religion, again, that's the thing that we grow up with. And we say, oh, we should be unconditionally love someone. But it's hard, to be honest, because I do want you to change a little bit. Why don't you do it like that?
We all the one time, yes.
Yeah, right? And so now for me to actually go and say, I love Joe unconditionally. What he does, who he is, whatever. I've also realized that I don't need to fix anything for him, right? Like if he says something, I go like, I trust that you will work that out because I trust you and I love you unconditionally. I don't agree with everything that you say, but I just love you. And I just want to be the safe place for you to come back to. That's where I am right now. And I'm sure that's going to stay like that forever. But my basket of what true love means might grow. I might add things, but that's where I am right now. Because also I think for me, what I want is to be unconditionally loved too. And so there's the mirror also. This is my vow right now, is to say, actually not to say, because this is actually how I feel. Joe asked me the other day, what does love mean to you? And he listed these things, and I was like, gosh, those are really good examples. And at the end, I was just like, just love you. I just want you to know that you are so extremely loved and accepted for who you are. And if you could do the same for me, that'll be amazing.
That would be nice. Very touching. Very touching. Thank you. I have one more question related to that. Also, like maybe for the listeners, either women or men who are listening, who've been maybe single for a long time, have been traveling, you shifted places, you shifted careers, you built your own business baby, let's say, and then suddenly you moving in with a man in his house and settling. How did that go? Was that an easy decision?
Gosh, Joe and I just fell in love and moved really, really fast, right? So, really fast. Looking back at it, it's difficult because also we are both, like I said, older, right? So both set in our ways and expectations. And then we come from different backgrounds, right? His mom cooked like that. My mom cooked like this. I cook like this. And what is the expectation? My honest opinion right now would be that communication from the beginning is very important. I would say to someone, there's conversations that you should have, really. And it's nice to be in love and you don't want to get out of that bubble. And if you are like me and you're not a good communicator, you shy away from possible conflict conversations. But sometimes that's also in your mind, right? You might think it's a conflict situation and maybe it's not. Maybe your partner will be totally open for getting that and having a conversation, and that conversation will just take you into a deeper level. That's still a learning for me. So I'm saying that to people because I'm also saying that to myself and inviting myself to do that. I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but to have a couple of serious conversations, Leona, from the start. And sometimes it's hard to be honest with ourselves and say, hey, this is a red flag that I'm not willing to live with.
Very true.
But then also, I saw this in a relationship masterclass once, and she said, it probably will never be perfect. I mean, there's people who claim they are perfect, but you are getting some things and some things maybe not, right? And so are the things that you're getting, how good are they, or how much do they mean to you versus the things that you don't get, right? And that's an important one too. And to also kind of like always remember, it doesn't always have to be this. My friend, they've been married now for 35 years. And she said suddenly her husband just came home and he's like, I'm not going to feed the dogs anymore. And they all sat there and they were like, what? He's like, yeah, decided I'm not going to feed the dogs. I'm tired of feeding the dogs for the last 35 years. And they were like, so what now? Then the family dynamics just had to change and someone else had to start feeding the dogs. So
as simple as it is, yeah.
And then the other thing is, I listened to a podcast the other day. And so this person, I've been married 3 times to the same husband. And you go like, what? Did you get divorced twice? And she said, no, we changed in the last 45 years. We've changed as people. And so our relationship to each other and the dynamic in our relationship changed. And so we had to come back to each other and say, hey, this is who I am now. These are my values now. This is how I've changed. This is how I like things to do. This is the interest. This is what I still want to achieve. Do you still want to be with me? Who are you? We still want to walk together. And so that's also a beautiful thing for me. And I hold on to that. I hope my husband holds on to that. We're going to change. And the dynamic can look different, but it can look different with you. And I think that's why I so deeply now believe in that unconditional love, because I love you and I choose that and want to walk with you still. So I think those conversations when you move in together, to have that, but also to know that it doesn't always have to be the be all end all and the be all or whatever. That is that, there is be fluid, and which is good with communication.
Beautiful perspective, because I always say I don't think an adult relationship should be unconditional, as when you're coming from very dysfunctional backgrounds, you should not accept all the behaviors and then I'm just loving you, I moved in with you, I married you, so now I have to love you unconditionally even though you treat me bad or poorly. So in this case I always have a different opinion about that, but I get it. The moment everything is healthy and functional and you're deciding for someone to settle, you accept the person as the being he or she is, right? So I get that term and that wording in this context. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because I do agree with that too. And as I'm saying these words over and over, there's another voice in me that's also saying, hey, not everything is unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, I think what's the other thing that's difficult here is the boundaries that we should then have within ourselves, and to honor that, which is a very, very difficult one.
Yeah, boundary setting is a very big learning, I think, for everyone. What is now you're 40, you're in a new chapter of your life, let's say, married, living at the coast, having a beautiful partner, having a lot of nice plans and ideas. What's coming up next for you?
Yeah, we probably have a couple of things in the pipeline. So as I've said to you, Joe built this beautiful space, which he had this vision 8 years ago, probably longer, which is for community and for gatherings and for skill sharing and for safety and for all of these things. So on the one side, we are trying to build our own lives in a sustainable way, right? So lots of things are already off the grid. But now, like, we're trying to do that with the food. That's not so easy. But, we're in the process, we're learning every time, etc., etc. And then making this space available for such ceremonies, events, people to come and visit and be exposed to sustainable living and getting an interest, or like eco living, or
Beautiful.
yeah. So this space is here, and with this space, there's other things too. And so we founded a company last year, Gaia Explore. So our farm's name, or the plot's name, is Gaia, and obviously, as you know, Gaia, Mother Earth too. Joe's background is very much into nature, and the exploration is both part of like Mother Earth exploration, but also of yourself, right? And so our company looks at that. So to have exploration of self, yeah, but also through nature, guided walking meditations, visits to other areas, tourism, people to come and stay here and be integrated into the sustainable lifestyle and learn like that. Okay, so the mushroom company, which is Fungaia, and there we are growing gourmet mushroom. I mean, we're looking into oyster, king oyster, so bigger mushrooms that restaurant can play with more, but also there for the vegetarians and stuff. Our big market is going to be the lion's mane because of the health benefits around it. So definitely believing in that. And then, as I've alluded to, the magic mushroom, psilocybin journeys, which we want to offer both for, trauma handling, for inner journey, and sometimes just to experience the beautiful nature in like all the dimensions that she really is. So that's for us here. And then also, Leona, as you said, I turned 40 last year, and then I did this biohacking course. I was interested in it, etc. There's so many words coming up, right? Perimenopause, and like metabolism is gonna slow down in 40, and like you're gonna get hot flashes, and like, oh, take care of your gut because of this, and like, oh my gosh, mobility is more important, because actually I can feel it. Like I sit in front of my computer and suddenly I get up and I can't straighten my hips and I'm like, oh no, mobility is more important than weightlifting. But weightlifting is important because that is how we keep a metabolism as we age, and and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much. Like I just need to prepare for this life that's not going to happen to me. So when I started going down this rabbit hole, and I was like, this is so much information. I wish someone could just give me like a book of just what I need to know for now. And I was like, maybe you are that book, Cerina. Maybe you are now going to create that book for just the woman that's going into this space. So yeah, that's my next baby, and I'm in the process of finalizing it. But I decided yesterday that the program will kick off on the 2nd of June. I will focus on women between 35 and 45, so women that's kind of like aware of there's going to be some changes happening, or I'm in the middle of changes happening. What are the things that I just need to know about? And so I think also then what happened was I thought about the burnout, and I thought about so many women our age, which is either in a kind of like starting your business again, or like you're in a full career, or even moms, right? I've got so many friends that's moms. And so, keeping your marriage alive, feeding your kids, trying to take care of your body and your career. And I was like, I don't even know how they do it, but if I can help in any way, there's just like this little book. And so this is the thing that I'm excited about. again, as I said to you, went down this like imposter syndrome. How can I do this? Who do I think I am? And then just
I
at
know
the
that
end,
feeling.
yeah. And at the end, just going like, hey, all that I'm going to do is going to do my best to help. And I'm just going to walk this path with women and see how that plays out. And then see how the rest of life plays out. But those are the focuses in our life at the moment.
Thanks for the enthusiasm and the excitement. I can see you shining talking about it. That's beautiful. Well, it's been a lot of different chapters, as every biography has a lot of different chapters to cover. Thank you so much for your authenticity, for the depth and all the different aspects of life you shared with us and me. What I always ask, and what I'm also really curious, especially now together we a bit of reflected on your whole life, what kind of advice or learning would you share with your 20 years old self? Cerina, that's just starting off for life. What would you advise your younger self about everything that you have been through or learned?
So there was this thing actually on Instagram the last couple of weeks where people go like, I met my younger self for coffee. And I couldn't write this. But now that you ask me this, I think the thing that I would say to her is, Cerina, go heal your root chakra. Do everything in your ability to go and heal your root chakra. And so I know that not everything is connected to the root chakra, but what I mean is go and do anything in your ability to go heal most foundational relationships in a life. That would be your food. Make sure that you know whatever shit you've got with food, go figure that out. Self-hatred with yourself, right? Go figure that shit out so that you don't drag it with yourself. And go clear out your shit with money, because money is good. Money is happy. Right? Don't drag, bad things will have a bad connectivity to it for the rest of your lives. Go heal, because, a problem comes back if you don't heal it, right? And so if we could have healed things earlier on, you wouldn't have gone into patterns. I wouldn't have gone into certain relationships. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have bullied other people. I wouldn't have, if I healed,
Maybe you would also not be there where you are now.
I wouldn't. No, I would like to be with Joe and in this house, but not in this, in this one.
The journey. Thanks. I'm connected to that. What is the meaning of life for you?
I think we are only here to experience life and how we want to experience it at that moment. Right now, I have this feeling about life is that, yes, we agree to certain things in our life. So I believe that pre-birth, we agreed on a certain life. So certain things we want to experience in this life. I also believe that in every situation, you have the choice to say, who do I want to be and what do I want to experience in this moment? And I think everything is supposed to go well. So those are the three things. I don't think that there's a big purpose in life. But those are the things that I believe life revolves around, or live or gets executed like. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your questions at what life is about. I think more it's about just experiencing life.
Being alive.
Yeah. Eating that ice cream and feeling the sun, feeling how water feels, and how does love feel? Sometimes heartbreak, sometimes ecstatic, wonderful. How does it feel to have a family? That's what I think.
I can relate to that. Thank you so much. And the last question that always goes through my head. Now you have the stage to the world, I'd say. And there's so much hardship, so many things politically, economically, different countries, different continents, different life experiences happening. What is your take on that? And what you now want to share with the world?
I would want everyone to know that they will be okay. Because for the surest thing, your soul did agree to this. So know that in whichever situation you're on right now, you will be okay, because your soul is taking care of you and your soul did agree to this. Okay? Number two, that everything is supposed to go well. Even if there's bad things happening right now, even to you, in the bigger picture, your angels, your guides, your creator, and your soul has good plans. And there's other things that might be hard, but know that in the bigger realm, you are surrounded by angels, guides, God, spirit, creator, your soul, and you will be okay. And the third thing for me, and I'm saying this not only as a Christian, I believe this for anyone who believes in anything, is that there is something bigger. even if your only belief is that there's a bigger consciousness, right? Or that all of us taps into a bigger consciousness. And I think right now, with everything going on in the world, it's scary. And we don't know what the future looks like and all of these things. It's now an invitation to all of us to deepen our relationship with this connection and be rooted and feel safe in this. And that would be my wish for everyone.
Beautiful and very touching and very strong. Thank you so much, Cerina, for your time, for your openness, for your words, and everything you shared with me today. And well, I wish you the best, of course, for the next chapters and future that's coming up. Until then, I'm sending you a very big hug to Namibia, and we're gonna speak soon again.
Thank you, my friend. I hope that one day we will be able to have this conversation about you. I'm sure everyone's very curious about that too.